The battlefield smelled of scorched metal and ozone, the acrid bite of war thick in the air. General Kthal stood atop the ruins of a human outpost, his heavy exoskeletal armor gleaming under the alien sun. Around him, his warriors moved methodically, stepping over broken bodies and shattered machinery, their reptilian forms casting long, jagged shadows. The battle had been swift. Humanity's defenses, though stubborn, had crumbled like all others before them. Kthal had studied this species before launching his campaign. They were adaptable, persistent, and irritatingly resourceful, but in the end, still weak. Their technology, while impressive, was not insurmountable. Their tactics, while clever, were predictable, and their will to fight, though fierce, was breakable. He had shattered it today. A cluster of human survivors knelt in the dust before him, their uniforms torn, their weapons stripped away. Some trembled. Others stared at the ground in silent resignation. But one among them did neither. A man, bloodied and restrained, lifted his head and met Kthal's gaze with an intensity that made even the general pause. "You don't kill humans." The words came slow, deliberate, each syllable laced with something just shy of a threat. Kthal narrowed his golden eyes. The human's voice was steady despite the gash across his temple and the bruise darkening his jaw. His uniform bore the insignia of an officer. Asterisk, asterisk, Captain James Carter. Asterisk, asterisk, if the insignia was to be believed. Kthal was not accustomed to his prey speaking with such certainty after defeat. "I don't." Kthal's voice was deep, a guttural growl that reverberated in his armored chest. "Then tell me, human, what is it I have done here?" He gestured to the bodies strewn across the wreckage, to the smoldering remains of their defenses. Carter didn't flinch. "You made a mistake." Kthal's mandibles flared slightly, amused despite himself. "A mistake? I conquered this colony in under a day. The humans here are broken. Your defenses are ash. Your people will be processed as prisoners. What mistake have I made?" Carter inhaled sharply, wincing at the pain in his ribs, but still, he smiled. It was not the grin of a man on the verge of death. It was the expression of someone who knew something Kthal did not. "You don't kill humans," Carter repeated, his voice quieter this time. "Because if you do, we come for you." The weight of the words settled between them, an invisible pressure that made the air feel heavier. Kthal tilted his head. Was this a desperate bluff? A feeble attempt at defiance? He had seen many species beg, bargain, and threaten before their end. This was different. Carter's voice was not that of a doomed man trying to salvage pride. It was a warning. A chime in Kthal's earpiece interrupted the moment. He tapped the device, and his second-in-command's voice crackled through. "General, we have intercepted a transmission from human space. Reinforcements have been detected approaching at faster-than-light speeds." Kthal let out a short, irritated breath. "Numbers? Unknown, but our long-range scanners are struggling." A pause. "Something is interfering with our systems. Our predictive models can't calculate their arrival vectors." Kthal frowned. Humans were not supposed to have technology capable of disrupting Velkarian scanning arrays. He turned his gaze back to Carter, who had not stopped watching him. The captain's smirk had widened slightly. "It's starting," Carter murmured. Kthal's patience thinned. He grabbed Carter by the front of his uniform, hauling him up until their faces were inches apart. "What game are you playing, human?" "No game," Carter said, still smiling despite the strain in his body. "You think you won because you took one colony? You think we'll just mourn and fade? That's not how this works." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Every species that ever tried to wipe us out, they don't exist anymore." Kthal's grip tightened. "Lies." Carter gave a slow, pained chuckle. "You tell yourself that. It won't change what's coming." Kthal released him, letting him drop back into the dirt. Carter coughed, but didn't stop smiling. The general turned to his warriors. "Lock the prisoners up. I want all long-range weapons primed and orbital defenses at maximum readiness." He hesitated before adding, "And find out what the hell is interfering with our sensors." His soldiers moved quickly, dragging the prisoners away. Kthal watched them go, then turned his gaze skyward. The stars were quiet now, distant and undisturbed, but he knew that in the darkness beyond them, something was already moving. He was not afraid. Not yet. But for the first time in a long, long time, he wondered if he should be. A tremor ran through the command deck of Cthulhu's flagship, a deep, unsettling vibration that set his warriors on edge. The reinforced viewports showed only the cold void of space, but something was coming. His officers stood at their stations, claws tapping nervously against their consoles. The interference in their long-range scanners had worsened. They were blind, and Cthulhu despised blindness. A junior officer, her crest flattened in unease, turned from her station. "General, we have." The ship's warning klaxons blared, cutting her off. The viewport darkened, the automatic tint reacting to a sudden surge of energy. Then, space itself tore open. The first human ships did not arrive in formation. They did not slow from FDL like disciplined naval forces. Instead, they appeared impossibly close, violating every known law of momentum. Enormous, obsidian vessels slid from the abyss, their hulls reflecting no light, as if carved from the void itself. Cthulhu's throat tightened. This was not the human fleet he had studied. Their warships had always been efficient, but conventional, bulky, rugged carriers and destroyers. But these? These were something else. A silent ripple spread across the battlefield. Then every Velkarian screen, every sensor, every system went dark. The bridge dimmed, emergency lights flickering to life. The officers shouted, scrambling to restore systems. "What happened?" Cthulhu demanded. No one could answer. Their targeting arrays were offline. Communications were dead. Even their internal networks had gone silent, as if their entire fleet had been cut from existence. And the first shots landed. The Velkarian dreadnought beside them, a warship 3 kilometers long, plated in armor that had withstood planetary bombardments. Asterisk, asterisk, crumpled like paper. Asterisk, asterisk, no explosion. No impact warning. Just a silent, invisible force that folded the ship inward, reducing it to a jagged, burning husk. The officer at the weapons console gasped. "General, we don't know what they're using. There's no energy signature, no projectile readings." Another ship was erased. Then another. Panic spread through the bridge like fire. Cthulhu's soldiers had fought countless enemies, had conquered worlds beyond counting. They had never seen an enemy like this. He forced himself to focus. "Give me something." Manual firing solutions. Visual targeting. Anything. The officer's claws trembled over the controls. I can't even tell where they are." Cthulhu turned sharply to the viewport. The human fleet remained eerily still, their weapons silent, their movements precise. They were watching, assessing. Then came the transmission. The bridge speakers crackled to life, the only functioning system left. A voice, calm, measured, spoke in Velkarian. "We warned you." Cthulhu knew the voice instantly. Captain Carter. A cold, crawling sensation tightened in Cthulhu's gut. He stepped forward, mandibles clicking together. "You think disabling our systems will make us surrender?" He spat the words, defiance thick in his voice. "We are the Velkar Dominion. We do not fall so easily." Silence. Then Carter spoke again, quiet and absolute. "Every species before you thought the same." Cthulhu barely had time to register the meaning when the humans attacked in full. The darkness broke with a sudden, blinding light. But it was not weapons fire. It was them, swarms of black, insect-like drones detached from the human vessels, moving with impossible speed. They tore into the Velkarian fleet, not with missiles, not with energy beams, but with something worse. The ships began to dissolve. The drones latched onto hulls, burrowing in, spreading like an infection. The metal itself unraveled, breaking apart at the molecular level. Cthulhu watched as one of his warships disintegrated mid-flight, its entire structure turning to dust before his eyes. This wasn't war. This was annihilation. Desperation surged through Cthulhu's veins. He spun to his crew. "Prepare for emergency retreat." Now, the navigation officer's eyes were wide, pupils dilated with terror. "General, there's nowhere to go." Thal followed her gaze to the viewport. The human ships had surrounded them, not in a traditional formation, not in any recognizable pattern of war. They had positioned themselves in a perfect sphere around the Velkarian fleet, an execution chamber made of void and silence. Thal's hands curled into fists. They had never intended to fight. They had planned to erase. Carter's voice came again, calm as ever. I told you. Thal bared his teeth. Damn you, human. You think this is victory? You think slaughtering warriors who cannot fight back makes you strong? A pause. Then, you chose this. The bridge lurched violently. The ship groaned. The walls bent inward, as if something was pressing on them from all sides. The very space around them was collapsing. The realization hit Thal all at once. This was no fleet engagement. This was punishment, and the Velkar would not survive it. Thal awoke to silence. Not the silence of deep space, nor the disciplined hush of a warship's command deck. This was something else. Asterisk, asterisk, a void, asterisk, asterisk, an absence, as if the universe itself had exhaled and forgotten to draw breath again. His body ached, his armor was gone, and the cold metal floor beneath him hummed with a low, mechanical thrum. When he tried to rise, restraints tightened around his wrists and ankles. He was a prisoner. A figure stood in front of him. Captain James Carter, alive and whole, arms folded behind his back, his expression unreadable. He was not gloating, not smiling, just watching. Thal let out a slow breath, adjusting to the dull ache in his chest. Where am I? His voice was hoarse, his throat raw, as if he had screamed but could not remember doing so. Carter stepped forward, his boots making no sound against the floor. Aboard the Sovereign. The name meant nothing to Thal, but the implication did. He was no longer on a Velkarian ship. His mandibles clicked, but he kept his tone steady. You took me prisoner. Carter didn't answer immediately. He glanced past Thal, toward a screen embedded in the wall. It flickered to life, displaying a planet, a familiar one. Velkar Prime. Thal stiffened. The homeworld of his people, seat of the Dominion's power, its golden cities stretching across continents, its fleets standing guard like sentinels of an empire that had never known fear. Something was wrong. The image wavered. The colors bled away. Cities became shadows. The oceans, once deep and endless, vanished. The very surface of the world began to fragment, as if reality itself had turned fragile. Thal's heart pounded. He had seen planets fall to war, had commanded orbital bombardments that reduced civilizations to ruins. This was different. There were no explosions, no fires, no wreckage. Velkar Prime was not being destroyed. It was being erased. The realization hit him like a blade through the chest. No, his voice barely escaped his lips. What have you done? Carter exhaled through his nose, his gaze never leaving the screen. Nothing. His voice was quiet. Matter of fact, this was already happening the moment your fleet set foot on that colony. Thal jerked against his restraints. You lie. We, our people, our empire spans hundreds of worlds. You cannot erase an entire species. Carter finally looked at him, and in that moment Thal saw it. The weight. The knowledge behind the human's eyes was heavier than any battlefield loss, sharper than any blade. You don't kill humans, Carter said. The words were calm, but they struck harder than any warship's weapons. Because when you do, it's not just vengeance. It's not just war. It's something else. He glanced at the screen again. Velkar Prime had already faded beyond recognition. Every species that has tried to wipe us out, every single one, has disappeared. Not conquered, not defeated. Gone. Thal's breathing turned shallow. His mind fought against the truth forming in front of him. This isn't possible, he whispered. You're saying you have some weapon? Some force capable of annihilating history itself. Carter tilted his head slightly, considering. I don't think of it as a weapon. I don't even know if it's us who does it. The word sent ice down Thal's spine. Carter took a slow step forward. But every time a species tries to exterminate humanity, something happens. First, their armies fall, then their fleets, then their records. Soon, no one remembers them. Not even us. Thal's jaw tightened. You expect me to believe that your people wield some cosmic force of retribution? That the universe itself erases those who dare harm you? Carter shook his head. I don't expect you to believe anything. He gestured toward the screen. Velkar Prime was gone. Nothing remained. Not even the black void where a dead world should have been. It was as if it had never existed. Your people are next, Carter said, his voice quiet. Not just the soldiers. Not just your government. The shopkeepers. The families. The histories. The names. All of it. Thal thrashed against his restraints. His breaths came fast, too fast. You can't do this. He had to believe this was some elaborate deception. A trick, a manufactured illusion. But deep inside, he knew. Carter lowered his voice. It's already happening. Thal squeezed his eyes shut, but it changed nothing. The weight in his chest was crushing. He had led his people to what he thought was a glorious conquest. Instead, he had damned them to something worse than extinction. He opened his eyes and glared at Carter. You could have warned us. Carter stared at him for a long moment. Then he said, I did.